Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to be talking about character design and just some tips for designing characters and some tips that helped me. But first of all, I just want to say that this video is sponsored by Skillshare. And if you haven't heard of Skillshare before, it's an online learning community for creators. They have over 16,000 classes in a bunch of different categories. There's illustration, animation, graphic design, and so many more categories. Their premium membership gives you unlimited access so you can watch as many classes as you like related to your area of interest. And you can learn so much from these classes and also get inspired to improve. And I know whenever I watch detailed tutorials, I'm always really inspired to get better and put into action what I just learned. There's a link in my description to 2 free months of membership for the first 100 people. It's $10 a month after that, so you can continue to use Skillshare if you enjoy it, or you can cancel before the 2 months are over, so there's no risk. You can also download the Skillshare app for Android or iPhones, and you can tap into classes even when you're offline. This video is going to be talking about character design, so I watched a few courses talking about character design so I could hopefully improve on it because I see it as a weakness of mine. So I wanted to watch some tutorials before making this video. So I found 2 classes helpful in particular. The first one was Draw a Circus of Characters, Exploring Shape and Body Proportion by Nina Rycroft. And she talks about the importance of shape, silhouettes, and proportion. And the second one I watched was called Character Design with Story by Hayden Obe. And he talked about how it's important to have a concept or story about your character before you design it, and to ask yourself questions as you go, and that kind of helps the whole process. So make sure you check out the link in my description for 2 free months of Skillshare for the first 100 people. So my first tip, and as you'll see in my video here, the speed paint, warm up. I did so many scribbles and drawings before I actually drew the actual characters that I decided on. I did a lot of sketches, and it kind of took me a while to get into the flow of things, get into the zone kind of. So it's really important to warm up drawing before you draw what you want to draw, if that makes sense. That would be my first tip for that. So when I was younger, I used to design characters all the time. I found it so inspiring, and I would design so many different outfits and come up with stories. And of course, everything was really generic, but it was still really fun. And I want to get back into that because it's really important to push yourself creatively. And I don't feel like I design characters enough or design things enough, and the design process can take so long, but it's good for you. It's good for your creativity. So character design is hard. I find it hard. It's hard to think of original things and cohesive concepts. So if you don't already have a concept for your character, it's good to come up with a loose idea. So definitely my first tip would be start with a concept. This could be their personality, their backstory, their occupation. Just ask a lot of questions about your character as you work. And I find that I come up with ideas as I go, so you just kind of start off with something simple and you add on to it as you go, and find more design elements and more backstory for the character as you design them. The concept that I had for this character was he was gonna be kind of an animal protector almost, or takes care of animals, but they're fantasy creatures. And then eventually end up coming with a female character, and they're both kind of have this uniform thing, and they're I don't know what you would call it, but they kind of take care of all the creatures. And my next tip would be to consider shapes and proportions. So this can be especially useful if you're designing a non-human character, so animals or really cartoony characters. Think of shapes for them to fit into. Also, make sure that each of their silhouettes are recognizable, so you'll be able to tell which character is just based on their silhouette. That's a good rule of thumb for seeing if your character can be recognized amongst a bunch of other characters. For the 2 characters that I designed, they were just human characters. I wanted to start off with something I was familiar with, which is humans, and I made them both kind of young, so their heads are bigger compared to the rest of their body. And I made the girl slightly shorter than the guy character. I didn't really play with proportion too much though, their body types are pretty much very similar to each other, and you can just keep redesigning characters. You can just keep going, and you can keep redrawing things over and over and changing them as you go, and characters can evolve over time as well. As more people draw them, they might eliminate certain details or add certain details, and sometimes you need simple characters. If they're going to be in a comic, you need to be able to draw them quickly. Like, you don't want a whole bunch of details on your character. And my third tip would be to make choices about your character that have a reason, and this can kind of help you be more creative as well. So if you're thinking like, oh, why did I put a leaf connecting his like cloak thing, and why does he have that like cape cloak thing? And my idea behind that was that I wanted both characters to have a lot of pockets, so they kind of keep like food in there for the animals or tools that help them take care of the animals. So they have like pockets full of all their gear instead of carrying a bag. That was kind of my idea behind it. So the reason why I did all that was the pockets had a purpose, and the capes have a purpose as well. They can like protect animals inside of their capes, or like hide things from other people for the animals. That was just kind of my idea. And also you want to think about the style that you're going to draw your character in. I wanted to go for a very cartoony look for this, but I wanted them to have like kind of realistic proportions, so it's kind of my style, maybe a bit more cartoony because they're younger characters. Like, I would imagine them being maybe like about to go into high school. That's kind of their age. Maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older. I'm not exactly sure because I haven't had much time with these characters. Just this whole process took me, I think, like 7 hours of footage I had. It takes me so long to design things because I'm really indecisive and I like to go through a whole bunch of different options, and I don't do it that often, so it takes me a long time. And number 4, which I don't really think I did that much research or reference for this, but it's good to do research if you have like a very specific idea. It can help you with your character. Of course, if you want to draw a character that lives in the cold, you want to look up what do people have when they live in cold weather. Look up pictures of winter coats or fur and stuff like that. You want to be accurate with your character. If you have a hard time thinking of their pose, look up different poses. These characters, I just did simple standing poses for the sake of this video, but if I were to actually be like fully fleshing them out, I would probably draw them in a bunch of different poses and see how they move and put them into action poses, but these are just very stiff standing poses just to get the front design, but you can draw the back design. You can do a character turnaround to see how they look from all angles. So, and you also want to think, of poses. How old are they? What are they going to be wearing? What's their race, their skin color? How tall are they? Like, I already talked about proportion, but like, how tall are they? What are their proportions? How do they compare to other characters? And it's good to look up references if you're stuck on something and to research things that you need to research. And you might learn a lot, and it'll make the whole design process a lot easier. And my number 5 tip would definitely be to have an appealing color scheme, or at least something that's recognizable. Like, don't go overboard with the colors because it doesn't have to be super complicated. Looks do matter when it comes to designing characters after their purpose and their reason for wearing what they wear, but the way it looks is important. It's important to have a clean, memorable design, I guess. It doesn't have to be like ultra detailed to be a good character. Just like look at popular cartoon characters and see what makes them recognizable, and they don't have as much detail as you'd think. There's a lot of really simple cartoon characters that are really effective because they're very clean design. And this is the hard part, I find, to have details but not go overboard with the details so that they are still like readable, I guess. And my last tip would be, so the 6th tip would be trial and error. Design your character and redesign them over and over and over until you're happy with them. The design process is a lot of trial and error, at least it is for me, because you're not going to get it right the first time. You're going to draw it out, and then you're going to realize all the changes that you want to make. Like, maybe you want to make them taller or shorter. You want to change up their proportion, their hairstyle, their outfit. So I would recommend saving all of your old versions of your characters and redrawing them so you can compare them and see what you like better and what you wish you didn't change, and you can like go back to previous designs and add in those elements but then make newer changes to them. So definitely save old versions of the characters as you work so you can kind of see how they have developed. It may take a really, really long time before you find a combination that you like, and don't expect to figure it out in like a day. If you're doing this just for fun, like just as a hobby, characters just kind of develop over time, especially if they're like your own little project that you like to work on from time to time. You might find their design changes a lot, and it's never going to be perfect the first time you draw them. It's going to take a lot of trial and error. That would be my 6th step, because this took me 7 hours just because of the design process. I kept like questioning myself too much, and I was thinking like, oh, is this too generic? Like, have I seen this before? I don't know. I thought of like this random concept and just kind of went with it. and I kept like doubting the design and the colors, and I just kept changing things too much, like over and over. I was redrawing things, recoloring things, and I had a hard time coming up with the colors for her outfit. I kind of like the blue better, but I didn't want them to match, and the fact that she's red and green, that's complementary colors, so I liked that. Also, I didn't name these characters, so if you can think of a name for them, please let me know in the comments. It'd be cool to hear your suggestions. And I also was going to design little creatures, like the little fantasy creatures, but I didn't finish those. I might finish those one day, but I'm not sure. So as you can see, I've left the first version of the characters and the second version. I'm not really sure, like there's some elements from the first one that I like better than the second one. The second one, I kind of like swapped their skin tones. I made her super pale with darker hair, and I made him more tan with kind of the same color hair. So if you find you're stuck on designing a certain character, just take your time, and especially if this is a hobby, like if this is for a job for a client, you might not have the luxury of taking your time, but if this is just for fun, just take your time and think about all the choices you're making, and don't be afraid of it taking a really long time or redrawing your characters maybe 10 different times before you find something that you like. These are just the tips that helped me. I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to designing characters. Like, I've done it a little bit, but I don't really push myself that far, and I just did like simple human characters, and I'm kind of like learning. I'm still learning all of this, but these are the tips that helped me, so I really hope you found this helpful. Make sure you check out the Skillshare link in my description. It works for the first 100 people who click on it. You get the first 2 months of Skillshare free. So I hope you found this video helpful. Hope you learned something. I definitely learned something making this video. And let me know if you want me to cover any other topics in the future, and I'll see you in my next one.